You look at the exposure that's happening in the church, and their legacy now is the last thing people remember about them.
Our role as Christians in this purpose that we put above all else is that we live as if it is our last day.
And then the next generation has the same choice. Will we follow the God of our ancestors, of our parents, or will we just think that they didn't know anything and I know better now?
As we've learned, it takes one moment to destroy your legacy.
So legacy falls much more than just me and my kids and my family. Legacy falls into you are a piece of a much bigger picture.
Urgency is different than importance, and great leaders do what's important, not what's urgent.
If I were to die tomorrow, like my children have 111 episodes to listen to of what their dad thought about life, right?
Bro, you're gonna make me cry. I've never thought about it like that. Yes, bro. I'm gonna have to mute my mic.
Welcome to the Eyes on Jesus podcast with Drew and Tim. We're here with you for episode 111, 111. Another great time as we're pushing through here with some great content for you. At least we think. We hope you think as well. We hope you agree. And if you do believe it's great content, would you like, share, subscribe, all the things? You know what to do.
Yep.
And you're probably not going to do them because we tell you. You will do it because you love the content so much. It brews out of you that you have to share. That's how things go.
That's right.
Anyway,
that's correct.
We also have an Instagram account now, Eyes on Jesus Podcast. I just created it. Yeah. So go check it out. Give us a follow. You're like, why did it take you so long to make an Instagram account? Well, we each have our personal accounts, which we use mostly. And so I did not want an extra account to kind of switch into all the time. But Instagram makes it really easy when you post a clip just to add a collaborator, and then it already shows up on the feed. So I was like, why not? Why not be on all the socials? So Drew, what's going on, man? How are you doing?
I'm doing good, man. It sounds like you for wanting more social media interaction. Like somebody posted the other day on Threads and like tagged me in something, and I was like, I forgot I even.
That's the thing.
Forgot I even had Threads.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a lot out there. So we're pretty much on everything because you're pretty much on everything. So that's how that works. Things are going great. We're tracking really well in ministry, tracking really well. Family. I'm kind of like tired. Can I admit that? Can I be that guy? A little tired, a little worn this week, a lot of crazy things going on, and good things that all symbolize progress, but progress in ministry is equally as hard as tough times in ministry. So just trying to push through all that. But yeah, like really looking forward to our discussion, mostly not just like having the discussion with you, but mostly because I did not get to attend something that you did. So you got to go to the Global Leadership Summit this year or at least watch it online. Yeah. And that's something that I usually do every single year, but did not get to this year. And so it's been great to catch up with you and kind of find out your thoughts and what's going on, and then also build an episode around it. And it's incredible that it's 111. Wow. That's a lot. Right. It's a lot of episodes. So yeah, dive in here. Tell me a little bit about Global Leadership Summit for our listeners. They might not know what GLS is. If you hear us, by the way, in this podcast, say GLS, we're talking about the Global Leadership Summit. And so for those that don't know what it is and how you get, involved in things like that, tell them a little bit about it and then what your takeaways were.
Yeah, they have a big, you can go in person, but then they have a bunch of host sites as you can go in person as well. This is the first year I watched it just myself, watching the live stream link instead of going to an actual church to watch it, which there's pros and cons to each. I think I was a little more disengaged this year because I wasn't at a church and that's all you were doing, because I was on my laptop doing work as well. Sure. And also the first day they had a ton of live stream issues. It was really bad to the point that they apologized for it, sent out apology emails, extended your video on demand after the fact for 30 days instead of 7, I think, something like that. And so that was a little, it is what it is. It's not intentional, but overall it's really good. Craig Groeschel runs it now. And last year we did an episode just going through all the speakers of what really stood out to us. And this year I don't know. I just wasn't as engaged. There was a bunch of names I didn't know. There's always people they bring on that just seem like they're just filling a gap. They're just filling a role. It is Christian conference, but a lot of speakers, you can tell when it's just like, this is a great leader that kind of just throws out God a little bit. And then there's other ones that are really invested in talking about the Bible and what Jesus has done in their life. And so it's really hit or miss on the leaders. Craig Groeschel was awesome as always. He always leads it, and his talk was amazing. His big the big takeaway for him was that, do less as a leader. And he's like, it sounds, counterintuitive, but if you just focus on like the one thing, or like 3 things a day, what are the 3 things you have to get done today? Instead of trying to get 20 done and doing them poorly, focus on 3 things. You might still do more than 3, but what are the main 3 things you're going to do? And he talked about one church that did a great job with their one thing was everybody's going to invite 3 people to serve. And they saw like 80% increase in volunteers serving, just
Wow.
with an intentional strategy behind every single staff member and pastor asking 3 people that weren't serving if they could serve. And that was their one thing that saw incredible results. And so that narrow focus really hit home for me. Instead of us all doing 100 different things, like what is the one thing or 3 things as a church, as leaders, even in your own personal life, what are the 3 things you have to get done every day? So that was really good from Craig. And then, honestly, I'll talk about John Maxwell. John Acuff is really good. He has a book called Soundtracks that I read with my son. What are the
Yeah, I've read that
soundtracks
too. He's really
playing?
good.
Yeah.
He's really good.
Like what you tell yourself about yourself matters. And so his book Soundtracks, I would recommend that. And then
we've talked about that, like when we did the whole I am, I do statements, and we've talked about New Year's resolutions and things like that. So, I mean, that's another great episode that people could go back and check out if they're into that kind of mental narrative kind of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, not raving reviews this year, but GLS is something that if you want to invest in your leadership, it is definitely a win to do it and include it as part of yourself or your team, whether you can go in person to a site or just get the online streaming option. There's no downside to doing it. It's going to be a benefit in one way or another. Not, like I said, not every speaker will resonate with you, and that's okay too. And then they had John Maxwell, who I think he said he tries to go there like once every 5 years. He kind of founded it, it sounds like. And so he was given a lifetime achievement award or something. And I mean, this guy's 78. His leadership books have been just so influential.
Yeah, it's unbelievable.
in Christianity and also just leadership in general. He has a new book with Chris Hodges from Church of the Highlands that I just read called Jesus, the High Road Leader. And it goes over principles of Jesus's leadership, being a high road leader, going above and beyond what normal leadership would be considered.
Wow.
Really good book. It's kind of like a devotional. So I highly recommend that. I've followed Maxwell for years, read a few of his books. He has so many. I've not kept up on all of them, but
he's got so many books.
I have the Maxwell Bible, which is a leadership Bible, really good stuff. So anyway, he shared kind of just a reflection on his life. And like he even joked, I'm talking about legacy, which is what you would expect from an old person, and a couple of things stood out is he talked about his father who, I think he passed away when he was like 96 or 98, something crazy. Wow. But when his father was 92, he spent time with him and asked him questions about, his life. And he's like, son, I think my best years are still ahead of me. And he was serious. Like that's how he saw life, is that, just with a positive outlook on the future. And also the challenge for Maxwell and considering legacy is to start now. Like what will people say about you when you die? And he's like, whatever that statement is, work on that now. Don't just hope that it will happen. At your funeral, someone will say something nice. Like, what is the thing you want people to say about you at your funeral? And then work on that now. If they wouldn't say that about you now, then you've got some work to do. And so legacy is not just for old people, which, I don't know if that'll be the title of this episode or not, but that's something that when you hear legacy is like, I'm a ways away because that's for old people. And it's funny because like old people is usually anybody in your mind that's 20 years older than you. Like if you're 20, a 40-year-old is old. If you're 40, 60-year-old. If you're 60, 80, it's like,
yeah, totally.
It's all perspective of what old is, because every age that we're at is but a vapor. The Bible says it's so short in this grand scheme of things that we can't waste the time that we have. And I like too that Maxwell was talking about retiring, and he's like, someone asked me, when am I going to retire? And he's like, I said, what does retirement mean? And they're like, well, you get to do the things that you love to do. And he's like, well, I guess I'm retired then, because his outlook on what he does is that he loves it. He enjoys it. He gets filled up by it. Why would I quit just to sit around or do some hobby when my full-time job is something I enjoy? And the whole concept of work and doing something you're called to do and not just something you have to do at some point in your life you will find yourself on one of the two things, but either way, work as unto the Lord, and then hopefully get plugged into something that is your gifting where God is leading you in. So all that to say, we'll talk about legacy today, what that actually means, and what our perspectives are on it, being that we're not old, even though if you were to ask 20-year-olds or ask my son, he would say we're old. But
We're old.
yeah, again, it's perspective. So we're not going to have this grand wisdom, from decades and decades of life. But I think we, in what we do and the legacy we're trying to leave through ministry and through family, I think we both, Drew, are very conscious of the fact of what we're doing matters.
Yes.
Both for eternity and both
Yep.
for the future, whether or not we're around or not. Because honestly, every single person listening, it's not that you wait until you're 80 and then all of a sudden you have this legacy to leave, because we're not guaranteed tomorrow. So it might mean that today's your last day, right? And sounds morbid. People don't like to think about death, but death is a very real thing in this world. And what I see happen is that someone goes too soon or too early, and you're like, man, now we got to think about all this stuff. Now we got to start, having a perspective we didn't have before until it was face to face with death. And how much more are we preparing ourselves, both physically and leaving behind something solid for our kids, both financially, but also spiritually, like all that stuff we need to start doing now, right?
Yeah. And you're right. Like we may not have the concept and perspective of a 60 or 80-year-old, but we certainly have had those conversations with families, and we've certainly seen that through ministry. And, our role as Christians in this purpose that we put above all else is that we live as if it is our last day.
Mm-hmm.
We see the disciples immediately after Jesus ascends to heaven. We see them talking about how time is running out, and you've got to repent, and you've got to have this intimate relationship with Christ. And, that's thousands of years ago. Now we're still now we're going to be casual. No, time is running out. Like we're going to say the same stuff. We're going to say time is running out. We're going to say we need to repent, and we're going to need to have an intimate relationship with Christ. So we want to leave that legacy, not only when we're preaching, and not only leave a legacy of people being saved in our path here, but we, like you said, want to leave a legacy with our kids, with our family, with our grandkids. Like we want to move through that in the appropriate way. And that's, when you think about John Maxwell, and it's just like you said, it's so fitting that he would speak on legacy, not just from age, but like, look at all that he's done, why he's done it. Like, look at the reasoning behind it, and look at what he's trying to accomplish. Like he's trying to build leaders that can lead when he's not here. He's trying to build communicators that can communicate when he can't talk. He's trying to leave to his family and leave to anybody that's in his path, and leave to his church, and leave to these other leaders like me and you. He's trying to help us understand the weight, the purpose, and the intentionality behind really everything we do, but every day that we do it. And so what I've always loved about John Maxwell, if you listen to his podcast or read his books or listen to his sermons or go to his church, or you just hear him in an interview somewhere, what I love about this guy is it sounds like everything he does, he greatly understands why he's doing it, and he greatly understands what he wants to accomplish when doing it.
Yeah.
And that's something that I've always valued with him. If I listen to a podcast, I usually can find in the first 3 sentences out of his mouth where he's wanting to take this conversation. Yeah. And sure enough, by the time we get to the end, I'm like, yep. There it is. And he does that even if you ask him a question. You ask him a question, and his response will be like, yeah, I'm answering your question, but ultimately I know the purpose of where I need to be. And it's not manipulative. It's really strategic. It's really smart. It's really being good at your craft, and it's really amazing thing. So the fact that he would write books and have podcasts and have sermons that relate to that, and certainly speaking at GLS, is another thing to add to it that just helps him leave a legacy. It's obviously important. So I love the having perspective of how people would talk at a funeral. How would you want somebody to, what would your eulogy sound like? And if it doesn't align with right now, then what do you need to shift? Right. That's kind of we talked about this recently at my church. It's kind of the gap between reputation and authenticity. right? We always want our reputation to be something, but it's when they meet you, what's the authentic version of yourself? And so you might have a reputation of a Christian, like you've got Christian in your bio, and you've got, you say the right things and you go to church and you check in when you're at church. But then when you hang out with somebody, what's the authentic version of yourself? Is it Christian or is it not? And so that gap between reputation and authenticity, that's where frustration lives. That's why people don't trust the church. That's why people don't trust Christians. That's where the hypocrites are. Like when there's that gap, people get frustrated in relationships. And what John Maxwell seems like he always wants to do is he wants to align his authentic self with his reputation and move them both forward. So it's a really good thing.
Yeah. Legacy is something that's talked about all throughout the Bible, either talked about directly, a lot of Proverbs about it, a lot of Proverbs about discipline and training and parenting. Proverbs 22:1, a good name is to be chosen rather than great riches, and favor is better than silver or gold. And so many people chase after the wealth and the dream of something more. And we see time and time again of people getting burned out because once they have it, they realize it wasn't all it was cracked out to be, because there's something deeper in this life. Jesus said, don't store for yourselves treasures on earth, but treasures in heaven. And treasures in heaven is, your character now, which carries over with you, the skills and the giftings and the things that you're doing now. Like you're still going to be the same person in heaven, just with a glorified body, and there's still things to do, and there's crowns we get, there's greater authority we get. We judge the angels, Paul said. Like there's things that we do that we're setting ourselves up for here on earth. And so legacy carries forward into heaven, but also while we're here, we see time and time again, even men of God in the Bible, we think of as, the hall of faith. Think of Gideon, for example, right? Gideon has fought tremendous battles, destroyed his father's idols, was called a mighty warrior, freed the people from oppression. And then his legacy was that the ephod he wore, people started worshiping. And then his kids, 70 sons, one son killed 70 sons or 69 other sons or something like that, So, and then you look at David, was not perfect, was a man after God's heart, but you look at Absalom, you look at Solomon, who was not, perfect by any means, but then look at the kingdom divided after that, and look at the legacy of Israel. And I think it's interesting when you look at both personal legacy, both you and your family and your sphere of influence, and then you look at corporate legacy or generational legacy, or, a legacy in a country. Like look at Israel, for example. Like you look at kings and you look at judges, and you look at everyone did what was right in their own eyes, and the society was wicked. And the legacy that type of society leaves is wickedness until someone steps in. It's until God raises up a judge or a king or someone, like King Josiah finds the Torah and says, we need to repent because we are not following God. And then people fall on their face in revival. And then you have a generation that turns after God. That's a legacy. And then the next generation has the same choice. Will we follow the God of our ancestors, of our parents, or will we just think that they didn't know anything and I know better now? And we see that time and time again today. We see kids rebelling against their parents. We saw this in the 70s, right, with the Jesus revolution. Kids rebelling, let's just sex, drugs, rock and roll, bro. And then God hits them hard. And what they rebelled against of their parents, in suits and in church, what they really rebelled against was like, we want to follow God in our own way, in our own path. And then God shows like, hey, you can still do that. You can be like, hip and cool, whatever the generation, and then still be passionate about me. And so God sweeps in through these hippies. And many times revival comes after like a breaking down of what came before, but also a rebuilding. And I think we're seeing that today with this deconstruction movement, and people falling away from church, oh, well, Gen Z is hopeless, Gen X is hopeless. And then now we're seeing them come back to church.
They're coming back to church.
Look at the leadership in America, right? I mean, this is not a Trump episode, but look at what we're standing for in Christian faith. We have Christian faith offices. We're putting forth Christian principles in the government, and we're saying that God is important. And also that leads people towards something greater than themselves when there are leadership that is standing in the gap and saying, hey, this is acceptable. This is okay for you to do. And then you look at other countries like the UK and Canada and things where this is not okay, and where they glorify sin. And then you have a society that falls away. So legacy falls much more than just me and my kids and my family. Legacy falls into, you are a piece of a much bigger picture And still the role you play is very important, because maybe you are a leader that can rally people around something bigger than yourself, or maybe just us leading churches. That is a huge thing into putting a stake in the ground for the area we're in, saying we will follow Jesus and we will love people around us. And you have thousands of churches that do that. That's why Christianity is still going strong.
Absolutely. You're 100 on that. Like, that's exactly why we're still going strong. And that's why we're seeing what we're seeing in our churches. And, there's something really, it might seem small, but there's something really powerful when you can start putting 10 commandments back in schools again.
Yeah.
There's something really powerful when we're able to, whether through nation or state, powerful that we can bring God back into the conversation. Mm-hmm. And I get it. Like, well, you don't even know what their walk's like. Yep, totally. And maybe it's just well-meaning atheist. I don't know. I mean, I don't know, or what I would call functional atheists, right? The consumers of church, functional atheists. Like, I don't know, man. Like, maybe that's what's going on. But either way, like, you can't deny the fact that suicide rates are down. You can't deny the fact that depression is down. You can't deny all the stats that went unbelievably up when COVID happened, dropped only slightly when the next administration was in, and then now have dropped more with this one. You can't deny the metrics and the statistics on that. So and then you look at other places, but like you said, this isn't a political episode, but it's really something to marvel at. And then when you take that into like just an introspective, like, look at, all right, well, now myself, like, what's the legacy that I'm leaving and what do I need to think through here? It's like, okay, well, like, how I parent matters, how I talk to people matters, how I go to work matters. Like, is it possible that like everything matters? And you know what I mean? And one of the things I've been thinking about recently is, and really God's been challenging me on this, is like, the more things that I do in a day, the more things I try to run and hop into one after another, after another, after another. And the longer the time becomes that I spend away from the Bible or in prayer, the harder it is for me to recognize that things matter, and the harder it is for me to not just get like lazy, or not just get like, a little more loose with the way that I speak, or a little more just like loose with even ideas and like what we should do. And so for me, it's so fascinating that you brought up what Craig Groeschel was talking about, of just like doing a few things a day. Like that's intentional and so important, not just to get things done, but also to make sure you're still being who you need to be.
Right.
Because me apart from Christ, I'm not who I need to be.
Yeah.
Me apart from Christ, I'm not who I want to be. And so, look, man, me and you have talked about this. We both play Xbox, and I play Xbox with some guys that are in Canada. None of them are Christians. In fact, one of them like worships Greek mythology, like worships Zeus. The other one grew up Catholic, got hurt by the church. Now he's an atheist. And then I got another guy who's Muslim. So like, we got a squad, and they know what I do. But if I get on there and I don't look at like, oh, I'm in this party and I'm hearing the way they talk, if I don't talk the way that I need to, then that's a bad example. So even hobbies, even like little simple things like going to the gym or just showing up at work or getting on and playing Xbox, like even those little things, they matter. And so, you can either accept that responsibility and recognize that like, hey, this is what you prayed for. This is what you were hoping for influence. Now you have it. Now it's tough. Now you're learning how difficult it is, right? Oh, I never get a break to just be me. What does that mean? That's not, what? Right. It's like, you're right. Like, you got to be with Christ always, because as we've learned, it takes one moment to destroy your legacy. And so when we say David in the Bible, we remember two things. We remember David defeated Goliath, and then we go, oh yeah, but then there was Bathsheba, right? Like, one moment can really mess up a legacy, and that's what he becomes known for. So it's just like, man, we gotta be smart in everything that we do. And then we have to pass that knowledge down generationally. And that doesn't necessarily mean, if you're listening to this, you're like, I don't have any kids. It's like, what? That have to, you're going to pass it down just to your kids? Like,
Yeah.
Go lead a young adult small group. Go serve in your church's youth group. Like, figure out a way to pass that knowledge down and that wisdom down. Like, this is what the church is here for, and we want to learn from each other. And I mean, my goodness, man, my grandma's still living. She's 94. I ask her questions all the time. I've learned more from her in the last probably 5 years than maybe anyone else.
Yeah.
Just because when I see her, I always try to make sure I have one good question.
Sure. Yeah, that's good, because I think the biggest thing that can destroy a legacy is the things done in darkness. Like, my legacy's good, but all this stuff I do, no one sees, and it doesn't matter. It does matter. You look at the exposure that's happening in the church over the last 2 years of huge leaders that have many books and huge churches, and their legacy now is the last thing people remember about them.
Right.
And that is sad, because it didn't have to be that way. It's sad because many of these Christian leaders had great knowledge, great teachings, and it was all destroyed of what was done in the darkness. Even if it was 20, 30 years ago, it eventually came out. And I think that's sobering to think of, when we want to leave a legacy and we just look at, oh, I'm doing this, this, and this. What about all the other 20, 30 things you're doing? Both good and bad. It doesn't have to be some egregious sin. But I think what happens a lot now is we see just this apathy in this generation, this age we live in, of being on phones, of just scrolling, of wasting time, of being involved in things that do not do anything for you spiritually, emotionally, or for eternal value for your legacy. And that's how we're wasting. This is what I'm thinking about a lot lately, is the fact that if I was more intentional with my time, I could write another book. I could do another thing, this or that. I could start something, right? And I don't want to do any of that unless God's calling me to do it. But I still think that I'm wasting some time, that maybe there is something God's like, I put this on your heart, and you just kind of forgot about it 2 years ago because you're too busy scrolling. And I think we're in an age where, I don't want to build a legacy just so people know my name. But I do want to leave something that my kids can say, like, that was my dad. My dad was strong in the faith. He loved our mom. He was someone people could go to for answers, and someone that cared. Like, start writing out, what do you want your kids to say about you now? And maybe they're not going to say that because they're teens or because they are 5 and don't have any concept of this. But, honestly, Drew, like, between you and me, and everyone else listening, like, this podcast is a way to leave a legacy, because if I were to die tomorrow, like, my children have 111 episodes to listen to of what their dad thought about life, right?
Bro, you're going to make me cry. I've never thought about it like that.
Right.
I mean, I've thought about it like that, but I've never thought about this like that.
It is. Bro. It's something that will last. That your kids be like, I can't talk to my dad anymore, but I can watch what he thought about this.
Yes, bro. I'm going to have to mute my mic. Everybody that's listening right now that goes to church with me is like, yep, that's Drew. That's it. Bro, yeah. Like, wow. Oh my gosh.
I thought the same thing when I wrote a book. I don't care, if thousands of people read it, but, like, I have something on paper now that, like, my son can read and say, like, that was my dad. So
you just keep talking.
So what does that mean for you if you're listening? What do you want your kids to say? Like, what can you leave them? Like, some people leave, like, a journal, like they give their dad a journal of, like, fill in the pages, right? Work on that. Do something like that you can hand over to your kids, right? Because, like, my wife gets upset with me when I think, like, well, what if we died tomorrow? What would happen? And she hates that because, well, that's morbid. I'm like, I know, I don't like thinking about it, but that's kind of where my mind goes, is like, it goes to worst case scenarios. And then so
Yeah.
I can,
I
because I'm
think
a
that's our
planner
job.
and
We're the planners, we're the
yeah.
protectors. I think that's our job. Like
So
anytime there's anything going on in the world, I'm like, all right, here's the plan. It's like, that's never going to happen, but we have a plan.
yeah,
It's like,
exactly. So the other part I'd say about work, I found this funny in my life is, you talked about putting out fires earlier. And, when I was in retail, the whole workday was a fire.
sure.
And,
Sure. Yeah.
but balancing that, like I remember I was early, probably in my 20s, and, two sides of the store had split with one other manager. And so we had two halves of the pie, basically. And so but we were very clearly different leaders, where he would literally be there for like 20 hours a day. I would sometimes leave at night, come home in the morning, and he'd still be there when the store closed. And he was just someone who lived there. He was like ex-military, and like but he didn't do things with urgency, and he was always drawn to things that were like the fire to put out, right? And I was like, I'm in at 10 hours. I'm going to do this, this, and this, and I'm going to leave because I need to be with my family, right? And I prioritized that. And there were some days that things didn't get done, but other days when like, I got what I needed to done. I'm sorry I can't help you over here.
Sure.
But sometimes we have to say no to things. There are so many things vying for our attention that it's okay to say no. Like think of Nehemiah on the wall. They wanted him to come down and engage in discussion. He's like, I'm sorry, I can't. I'm busy. Right. God's called me to do something. I'm sorry. I wish I could help you, but I can't. And sometimes we need to say that with grace and humility, like Nehemiah did. I wish I could help you, but I am needed elsewhere. And I think when we start focusing on what matters and focusing on leaving a legacy, like that is a matter of what are the three things, right? If you have three things you're going to do today, then if something is going to distract you from that, getting those three things done, I'm sorry, I can't do it because that's not my plan. That's not what God has for me today or this week or this month or ever. And then another story from my time in retail was I was probably 28, 29 at the time. And I took over this store that was just red, it's green, yellow, red being the worst. And then so I took over this red store, cleaned it up. I was only there about a year and a half. And when I left, it was green, running great, and I went to another store. And then, I don't know, maybe 3-6 months, I can't remember, down the road, that store is falling apart again, the one I came from. So I told my boss at the time, hey, did you hear about the store I came from? Like, I was there, I was running great. Now they're in bad shape, It's like, and I was saying it arrogantly, like, hey, without me, it failed.
Right.
And I'll always remember my boss was like, well, the sign of a good leader is the fact you could leave the store and leave them in good shape so they wouldn't have had to fail.
Like,
for me at the time, I was like, what? No, you don't get it. Like, I'm important.
Right.
I need to be there for them to succeed. Like, I mean something. And he's just like, well, you didn't set up up leaders that, you didn't train leaders well enough that could do it while you were away.
You didn't have to drive everything, and then you took the keys with you.
Exactly. And so that was a leadership lesson of awesome. Like, leaving a legacy of what leaders are you setting up, right? I mean, even in our churches, right? If we were to die tomorrow, let's go again, more of it,
let's do it.
Who could take over? Who would the elders be? Who would be running the church? Do we have that succession planning? And if we don't, that's fine. But also,
we're solid, by the way. If I die tomorrow, all they have to do is find like a decent communicator, and they're going to be great. That's it. That's all they got to do. They just got to find somebody. Now the podcast, again, same thing. All you got to do is find somebody to sit here and drink an energy drink and be decent. That's it.
Hey, but with AI now, do we ever really die? You could just create an avatar.
Okay, let's back up real quick. So you mentioned something that I want to put verbiage to for our listeners. So urgency is different than importance, and great leaders do what's important, not what's urgent. Now, do those overlap? Absolutely. Sometimes those overlap. Sometimes, what is urgent becomes the number one important thing, and sometimes what's important becomes really urgent. But as a leader, your role is to not run after what's urgent. It's to run after what's important. Mm-hmm. So great leaders have what I try to do, and I didn't say that in framework of trying to call myself great, so I hope everybody understands that. But I'll have a line in my notebook where I'll have urgent on one side, important on the other side, and I just have like a to-do list. Mm-hmm. And I'll do that personally, but then I'll also do that when it comes to, when it comes to our church. And so I recognize that like, it's important that I go to the gym, but like, it's not urgent from the standpoint of I've got to get it done right now, but it's like, no, but it is important and you need to go today. Like you need to put that in your schedule because you know all the things that rolls to. Somebody having, an emergency at the church and needing a phone call. That's where like, okay, urgency pops up, but that's what I'm here for. And so that becomes, so there is the overlap part. But if you can figure out how to recognize the daily things that are important and the daily things that are urgent, but they're just not quite what you need to take care of yet, that's what really matters. And I know for me, sometimes that'll cause trouble for people. Sometimes that'll cause trouble for you. Like sometimes people will think that you're not doing your job. I remember when I first got to this church, we had not a lot of youth and not a lot of kids. I had 3 youth and 2 kids, and the 2 kids were mine. And everybody was like, we got to get kids ministry figured out. We got to get kids ministry figured out. Got to get it figured out. And I was like, I'm going to focus on youth and I'm going to let kids kind of keep burning. And they're like, no, we got to get kids. We're never going to be able to have young families here if we don't have kids. And I'm like, I agree with you. And they're like, so then we need to fix kids. I'm like, nope, let's start with youth. And so we did. We started with youth and we grew that thing 11 times. And then after that, we went, wow, kids is on fire still. Youth is finally like the fire's out. And so we moved to kids ministry. And so that was urgent for a really long time. I mean, I can't tell you, we had a lot of families that came to our church and they were like, yeah, we love your church. We love the worship. We love the preaching. We love the whole thing, but like your kids ministry. And I'm like, yep, no, totally. And if you'll hang in there with us, like we're about to like fix that, but totally understand if you need to go somewhere else. And a lot of them did. And hey, totally get it. There's a lot of churches with great kids ministries. And now we're one of them. We just decided for a period of time that we couldn't run after everything. And so we had to pick. So you're right. Like you got to say no to some stuff. And the more and more people, like you mentioned with Craig Groeschel and John Maxwell, like the more and more people that can do things and the less that you're actually having to do, the better. And then you got to be, okay with things not being done exactly the way that you want them to be done. That's, to me, that's really the sign of a great leader, not just one that can hand over ownership, but can handle what you do with it. Right. I know a lot of leaders that hand over ownership and suck with the outcome. Like they're jerks. They're so mean. And a lot of you right now, like if you're in ministry, a lot of you right now are going, that's my pastor, or that's my boss, or that's my ministry leader. Because man, can people be mean in a text thread or on Slack or on Google? Like, dude, people can be ruthless, bro. So mean, especially on Sunday mornings. Like, who's going to get that crying baby out of here? Like, bro, whoa, okay. But like, if you're going to hand over ownership to somebody, that's 50% of it. But the way to complete that transaction is to then be able to handle what they do with it. And chances are it's not going to look the way you think it should be. Do you have the patience and the importance to recognize that they don't have to get the urgency right now? They have to get it right down the road. Why? Because eventually then what? Well, they build a legacy off of that. Yeah. And so what happens is people, you get bad leaders in bad places. They get mad because somebody took something that they gave them. They suck at it. That means you probably didn't do a good job as a leader, but we can move past that. They suck at it. You get all upset at them. They get all mad. They leave. Now your legacy is you're a mean leader. And now their legacy is anybody they talk to says, don't go into ministry. And there's so many people like that. So it's just awareness, man. We got to have great awareness for how we're leading people, how we're talking to people. And when we attach this title of Christian disciple, when we attach this title of follower, when we attach this title of we are with King Jesus, bro, there's a lot on the line in every single conversation, in every single discussion, in every single text message, in every single thing you do, in every single post, And so that's a lot of responsibility, and we've got to want that responsibility. We've got to honor it as well.
Yeah, for sure. Don't put production over people. right?
Yeah, that's
Value
right.
people, and as production might have a hiccup here and there, or your job might have something that requires, like, I mean, I was at a job in retail where corporate overlords looking at you nonstop with metrics, and if you don't meet them, then your job's on the line, and it's hard to value people in those environments for sure. Like, I lived
Yep.
it, and it's hard to stop and smell the roses. But at the same time, even if you live in a fast-paced environment like that, there still are moments that you can be kind. There still are moments that you can rally
Yeah.
people around the positives and not just focus on the negatives. And so if you're listening, as we wrap this up, the focus for you listening is, what does the next 1 year of your life look like? The 5 years
Yep.
or 10 years of your life look like?
Yep.
Like, think about it. It's hard to see beyond the moment, for sure. And they mentioned this at GLS too, is that, since COVID, leaders have been very much like survival mode.
Yep.
And we're out of that mode now, but
Yeah, we are.
some people are still in it because it's what
Yep.
we've done for the last 5 years. But it's time to dream. It's time to have vision. It's time to, like, start something that God's leading you towards. I don't know. Jesus might come back tomorrow, but that shouldn't stop us from doing stuff while we wait. And so think, I love the quote from Henry Ford: if you do the same thing you've always done, you'll get the same result you've always gotten.
That's right.
That is so powerful. If you do the same thing you've always done in your marriage, in your quiet time, in your work, you'll get the same result you've always gotten. And then you'll start complaining about the results when you never change the process to get there.
Right.
And so you have to change something in order to get something different. And so what does that mean for you? What spiritual disciplines or relational investments do you need to start now? And we talk about it over and over: quiet time, Bible, praying.
Yep.
Those are things that usually take a back burner to being busy. And that is the upside down kingdom we live in, of doing those things first.
Yes.
Will set yourself up, not only for yourself relationally, spiritually, but when you talk about leaving a legacy, if you're going to leave a legacy as someone who is spiritually dry, you're not going to leave a good legacy, 100%. But if you're filled up with the love and the gifts of the Spirit, and you have a relationship with your Heavenly Father, you're going to be someone that people talk about with the type of, like your grandmother, someone like, I want to be around this person because they have met Jesus, and they exemplify the love of Christ. And so I need to learn from them. That's what I want people to say about me. Right. And so what do I need to do differently today in order to set that up?
Yeah. And another thing maybe our listeners can do tangibly is, as they think about 1 year, 5 year, 10 years, as they think about the what do I want people to say about me or think about me when I'm gone? Maybe two things you could do tangibly. Number one, write out a eulogy. Write one out. Write out the eulogy. What,
like, here, read this to my funeral.
Yeah. What do you want someone to read at your funeral? So write out the eulogy, and when you get to that point where, like, oh man, he was consistent, and he was disciplined, and he was this and that and the other. All right. Well, are you? Are you though? And so, he tried hard, it's like, look, the big difference. He tried to be disciplined, and he's disciplined. He tried to be consistent.
Yeah.
But he tried to be on time. So write your eulogy out and see if it aligns. And then, what are the three things you need to get done? Like tomorrow, what are the three things you really need to get done? Today, what are the three things you need to get done?
Yeah.
And let's lock in on those, and let's do them really, really well. And I bet, I could be wrong here, but I bet that if you write your eulogy and then you write the three things you need to get done, your eulogy will teach you how you need to get done those three things.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. That's really cool, man. I hate I missed GLS, but I love what you shared today. And, big shout out to John Maxwell, big shout out to Craig Groeschel. Those are two guys, like, for people like me and you, man, those are two guys that you just hope nothing ever bad happens. Like, we just want them to finish well.
Yeah.
And that's something you want to pray for. Like, you want to pray for our leaders, like, finish well.
Yeah.
And so I'm just mad respect for both those guys. They continue to pump out incredible content, incredible perspective and wisdom, and, certainly help both of us and many others in their leadership.
Yeah, for sure. Well, if you like this episode, please like and share it. Also, comment. What does leaving a legacy mean to you? What do you think someone would say at your funeral? Let us know in the Eyes on Jesus Facebook community. Also, you can leave comments on Spotify now. You can also leave comments on our YouTube channel. You can also email us at eyesonjesuspodcast@outlook.com. We do not get a lot of emails, so your email will guaranteed to be read and responded to. And so, as well as help support the show, kingdomandwill.com, use code Eyes on Jesus for 15% off. I'm due to buy some new shirts. They have a new...
Me too.
Yeah, so we'll go use this discount as well and maybe get a few new styles for... I almost said summer coming. We're coming into fall. Maybe I need some long sleeves. So for the
sweatshirts
for the month that we wear them here in Arizona. So yeah, for sure.
Nice.
So all right. Well, thanks for joining us. And until next time, go with God, grow in discernment, and keep your eyes on Jesus.
Thanks for joining us on the Eyes on Jesus podcast with Drew and Tim. Don't forget to hit subscribe